Americans fell out of love with Alfa Romeo in the early 1990s, forcing the Italian automaker to retreat from the US market. Fast forward to 2014 though, Alfa had gathered itself and relaunched in the US with the 4C. And while sales haven't been off the charts since then, they have been good enough for Fiat Chrysler to consider adding new models. But until Alfa Romeo is fully boots on the ground here in the US, this is what we have to work with, the 4C Spider, or what we Yanks like to call a convertible. Dimensionally, the Alfa Romeo 4C is a very short, wide car. Aesthetically though, its Italian design makes it look more exotic and a little bit longer as well. So let's point out a few of the biggest features. You've got that traditional Alfa Romeo triangular front grille, as well as it's being flanked by two air inlets, which aren't cooling the engine, they're pushing air over the front tires, cooling the brakes as well. Then, here's a bit of history. In 2014, Alfa Romeo's 4C was introduced with a very weird, like, spider headlight thing. That did not go over very well, so they redesigned the headlight to a more traditional two-lamp setup on either side with these carbon fiber accents. I think it looks really good. So following the character line that comes from the front end and kind of parts out over the car's design, it follows through over the side into this C-shaped air inlet up top, and then carbon fiber trimmed C-shaped air inlet on the bottom, and that is putting air into the mid-mounted 4-cylinder turbo engine. You've got these optional 18 and 19-inch silver painted aluminum wheels. They look really good, and then coming through to the back end, you've got this ducktail rear spoiler. It looks very seamless with the rear end design. You've got dual oval tail lights. You also have a double bump rear diffuser and two chrome tipped exhausts. There are not all that many mid-engine sports cars available for less than $70,000, but this is one of them. So where do you find the engine? In the middle. Of course, as you're lifting this hood latch, you're kind of wondering, what am I supposed to do with my one arm if I've got groceries or whatever, because there aren't these hydraulic arms. That is because they're trying to save weight. So instead you have this metal arm like you would for a normal hood. Oh man, that took me forever to get that at first. Anyway, so what can you fit in the trunk? You can kind of fit a backpack and maybe a couple grocery bags or something. It's not huge. You may not even be able to fit a normal suitcase in here, but it's good enough for a short haul. What is sending power to the rear wheels? That is a 1.75 liter. That's right, it's smaller than a 2-liter engine, but it's turbocharged, so it makes 237 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque, which is plenty in a car that weighs about 2,500 pounds. So that low curb weight is because of the fact that it is a carbon fiber tub with aluminum body panels. That makes it even more exotic because, of course, the supercars of today are using that carbon fiber extensively. This is available in a car that's $65,000. So, you're ready for your drive, you're gonna open up the cabin and see, that looks really hard to get into. Of course, it's not really an issue for someone my age, but the people who can actually afford this car, they may not be comfortable contorting themselves on a daily basis. But we're gonna do it for the sake of you, the viewers. So here we go, we're climbing in. Okay, now that you've finagled your way in here, what are the first few things you're gonna notice? Well, one, you're gonna notice the fact that these aren't the worst seats in the world. They're actually fairly well padded. We've got an Alcantara insert in the center, and then leather wrapped everything on the outside. You're also staring at a beautiful flat bottom steering wheel, leather wrapped again, compact. That's perfect for the tight little corners that this car is gonna wanna take. You're also gonna notice it's a fairly Spartan cabin in here. There's actually an aftermarket Alpine stereo system. That's pretty awful. I mean, okay, so this car isn't about the cool technology, but having this really cheap looking aftermarket stereo is kind of a turnoff. Then you've got these really cool toggles actually that are for the AC, for the locks and other stuff like that. Look a little further and you're gonna encounter more cheapness. This really crappy plastic here is, it just doesn't go with the cool carbon fiber that's wrapped everywhere else in the car. You've got a leather wrapped dash with cross panel stitching, and it looks good, it just doesn't feel good unfortunately. And your other creature comforts are fairly limited. You've got a 7-inch TFT display that doesn't show you all that much information. It's got your speedo, your tach, your oil temperature, and your fuel economy. But beyond that, you can't customize it. It does have one cool feature, it shows your boost. So if you're accelerating really hard, you can see that turbo boost build up. And it's in a really nice carbon fiber designed dash setup. Among the more frustrating parts of this interior is the general lack of storage. Well, except for two things. You've got this envelope back here where you can put a pair of sunglasses and maybe some keys. That's about it. And then you've got this slot here where you can shove your cell phone. At least that's how I've been using it. The worst thing though is if you've got a passenger, The design of this center stack here is a corner, so unless their leg is flush, they're gonna be hitting their shin on this every time. That's not comfortable. So you familiarized yourself with your interior, and then you realize, oh wait, it's a Spider, convertible, whatever. So you should take off the top. Well, that's easier said than done because it's a multi-step process, and for one person to do it, it's pretty damn annoying. So you gotta unscrew these guys here, which is not that easy. I've sort of pre-unscrewed them a little bit, but when they're tight in there, you don't have grips on them. So you can do that. And then you've got these two tabs over here that you pull in. You gotta do the same over on that side, then you gotta get out of the car. So you scramble out of the car, and then you gotta do one side or the other first. So you pull in the tabs, and then you lift that end, and you kind of roll it forward, go to the other side, doing the same thing over here. Pulling the tabs, lift it, kind of roll forward, and now you're playing gather. So you grab the top, take this over to the trunk, or you throw it away, whatever you want to do. You've got the top off. All right, so it's time for driving your Italian sports car. So you seat up and you grab your manual key without a trunk release switch on. You don't care, and you shove it in the ignition and you start it up, and you're met with a really annoying buzzing noise that goes on for what feels like an eternity. But there is a way to avoid it. Put on your seatbelt before you start the car. If you don't do that, you get that every time, and it is the worst noise I've ever heard in my life in a car. Anyway, so you're ready to go, so you adjust your steering wheel, telescopes and all that, and then you realize, oh wait, the gauge is cut off. And that's because you have to be a certain height, at least your torso does, for you to actually see everything on this display. I, at 6 feet tall and with apparently a long enough torso, cannot see everything. So basically I get cut off at the 2,000 RPM and the 6,000 RPM points on the tach. I can't see anything above that. It's kind of a bummer, but you kind of have to deal with it. So you've got your steering wheel in the position that you think is the closest to good. Put down the handbrake, you tab the 1 button, which means first gear, obviously. Foot off the brake, and you're ready to go. So there are a few ways to experience your Alfa Romeo 4C Spider's performance. You've got 3 drive modes here: natural, all-weather, and dynamic. The all-weather is basically using the highest level of traction control so you don't go crazy in a slippery condition. Natural is really like your comfort or your automatic setting. It's kind of just using the throttle in a way that's not too aggressive, but something that's usable for daily driving. Although I really wouldn't daily drive this, that's just me. Then you've got your dynamic, which is the least amount of traction control that you can have before switching it off completely. And it does a good job of not cutting in on the throttle response too much, giving you some fun with the performance. Then you can hold the dynamic forward for 8 seconds and it'll go into race mode. And that is basically switching off traction control completely, giving you free reign over using every bit of fun in the 4C Spider. So whichever drive mode you choose, you're going to be engaging with this 6-speed dual clutch transmission that is controllable by these steering wheel mounted paddles. Now you can leave it in its natural mode and in automatic, and it's kind of just going to be a seamless transition between the gears like any normal automatic. But you can also switch it over to manual mode and have full control over the shifts, meaning you can use more of the power band, stay in the meat of the power for as long as possible. Whichever way you slice it, this car is loud. It is possibly the most distinctive 4-cylinder I've ever experienced in my life. Maybe not the most powerful because of course there's the CLA 43 AMG, but it definitely has the most character. The noise is like a burble, switch to a whine, switch to I'm not gonna call it a fart, it's a little bit of a blump that comes off with the blow-off exhaust. It's really cool. So beyond the awesome concoction of turbo, spooling, and flomping exhaust, you have one of the most distinctive features to the 4C Spider, which is the steering. It is not just not electronic, it's not even hydraulic, it's a manual steering rack. It doesn't have the assistance of hydraulic pump. So that means at low speeds, it is all of your body weight, all of your effort to turn the car, but when you're moving, it really is hardly any different. What you do notice is how direct it is. So the moment you point it, it just darts exactly where you want it to go. Super rewarding to drive. So at a starting price of about $65,000 bucks, what is the 4C Spider fighting against? Well, If you think about it, the Boxster is now still a mid-engine, but now a turbo 4-cylinder just like this one. That is probably its direct rival. It's priced though about $10,000 less to start than this car right here, and it makes more power. Of course, the Boxster though does weigh 500 pounds more, so it's not directly competing with the 4C in terms of how it feels to drive. Outside of the Boxster, there isn't really any direct competition for this, so how about something indirect? I'm thinking of the Corvette Stingray, because it's priced about the same as this, and if you take this and the Stingray to a track, they're probably going to have similar lap times. Yeah, okay, so the Stingray's front engine, this is mid-engine, but in terms of a thrill behind the wheel, they're got to be pretty close. So the 4C Spider, it's quick, it's handsome, very exotic, you're not seeing anything like this on the road, and the noise of that turbo is, well, it's exceptional. But, you know, the novelty, the carbon fiber, all that, it's gonna fade over time. What you might be left with is a very expensive car that you don't want to daily drive. However, until the Lotus Elise returns to the US, this is the only representation of an ultralight mid-engine sports car, and I, for one, am happy to have the option.